Ambassador Kate Morrison stepped into the massive chamber and felt her breath catch in her throat. The Galactic Council Hall stretched out before her like something from a dream. Hundreds of alien beings filled the curved seats that rose up toward Ne, the ceiling in perfect circles. She had seen pictures, but nothing could have prepared her for this moment. Jake Sullivan walked beside her carrying the heavy case with Earth's membership application. He was young for a lieutenant commander, but Kate trusted him completely. They had spent months preparing for this day, and Jake knew every detail of their presentation by heart. The chamber fell silent as they walked down the long aisle toward the center podium. Kate could feel thousands of alien eyes watching her every step. Some of the creatures were beautiful in ways that made her want to stare. Others looked like nightmares that had crawled out of the deepest parts of space. All of them seemed to be judging her before she even spoke. Chancellor Veltar sat on the highest seat at the front of the chamber. The Zephyrian was tall and made of what looked like living crystal. Light moved through his body in patterns that Kate guessed might show his emotions. Right now, those patterns seemed cold and dismissive. Kate reached the podium and looked up at the sea of alien faces. She had practiced this speech 100 times, but her mouth felt dry. This was humanity's first chance to join the galactic community. Everything depended on the next few minutes. "Honorable beings of the Galactic Council," she began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's perfect acoustics. "I am Ambassador Kate Morrison of Earth. I come before you today to present humanity's application for membership in the Galactic Federation." A sound rose from the assembled aliens that Kate had never heard before. It started low and grew louder until it filled the entire chamber. She realized with growing horror that they were laughing at her. The insect-like Crix delegate made sharp, clicking sounds that somehow conveyed pure mockery. The gaseous nebulans rippled and changed colors in what was clearly amusement. Even the normally serious Altarians seemed to be shaking with what might have been silent laughter. Chancellor Veltar raised one crystalline hand, and the chamber fell silent. "Ambassador Morrison," he said, and his voice sounded like wind chimes in a storm. "You speak of membership as if your species has something to offer the galaxy. What exactly do humans bring to our civilization?" Kate had expected this question and launched into her prepared presentation. She spoke of human art and music, of their literature and philosophy. She talked about Earth's scientific achievements and their unique ability to unite different peoples under one banner. Jake opened the case and handed her holographic displays, showing humanity's greatest accomplishments. The laughter started again before she was halfway through her speech. This time it was louder and more cruel. A reptilian Drakmor representative stood up and spoke in a voice like grinding stone. "These primitives cannot even travel faster than light, and they think they deserve to sit among us. They are barely out of their caves." More voices joined in from around the chamber. "Violent apes," called out one alien. "Warlike savages," said another. Kate felt her face burning with shame and anger, but forced herself to remain calm. This was diplomacy, and losing her temper would only prove their point. "Humanity has made great strides in a very short time," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "We have ended wars, unified our planet, and reached for the stars. We ask only for the chance to prove ourselves worthy of membership." Chancellor Veltar's crystal body flashed with what Kate was learning to recognize as contempt. "The Galactic Federation exists to maintain peace and order throughout known space. Humans are known for their violence and aggression. Your species has spent most of its history killing each other over trivial differences. Why should we believe you have changed?" Jake leaned close to Kate and whispered, "Show them the Unity records." She nodded and activated another hologram that displayed Earth's recent history. The end of major wars, the formation of the United Earth government, the peaceful exploration of their solar system. The chamber erupted in more laughter. A floating jellyfish-like creature pulsed with bioluminescent patterns that clearly spelled mockery in some alien language. "They think a few decades of peace erases millions of years of savagery," it said in a voice like bubbling water. Kate felt the presentation slipping away from her but pressed on. She spoke of humanity's resilience, their creativity, their ability to adapt and overcome challenges. She showed them recordings of human music and art, examples of scientific breakthroughs, testimonies from the few alien observers who had visited Earth. None of it mattered. The council had made up their minds before she even entered the chamber. She could see it in their expressions, in the way they whispered among themselves, in the casual cruelty of their dismissive gestures. Chancellor Veltar finally raised his hand for silence again. The crystal patterns in his body shifted to what Kate now recognized as the visual equivalent of a sneer. "The Galactic Council has considered Earth's application for membership," he announced. "The decision is unanimous. Humanity is not ready to join civilized society." Kate felt the words hit her like a physical blow, but worse was yet to come. The Chancellor continued speaking, and his words turned her blood cold. "Furthermore, for the safety of all sapient species, Earth will be placed under protective custody. No human vessel will be permitted to travel beyond your solar system. This restriction will remain in place until such time as humanity proves it has evolved beyond its primitive nature." The chamber filled with approving sounds from the assembled aliens. Kate stood frozen at the podium, unable to believe what she was hearing. They were not just rejecting humanity's application, they were making Earth a prison. Jake touched her arm gently. "Ambassador, we should go," he whispered. She nodded numbly and began gathering her materials. The holographic displays flickered and died as she powered down the equipment. As they walked back up the long aisle, Kate heard the conversations starting around them. The aliens were already discussing other business as if humanity had been. Nothing more than a minor interruption in their day. Years of preparation, months of travel, and hope for the future had been dismissed in minutes. Near the exit, Kate noticed an elderly Altarian watching her with an expression she could not quite read. Unlike the others, he did not seem amused or contemptuous. If anything, he looked sad. Their eyes met for a moment, and he gave her the slightest nod before turning away. Kate and Jake left the chamber in silence. Behind them, the business of the galaxy continued as if Earth had never existed at all. In a few hours, news of humanity's rejection and imprisonment would reach every corner of known space. The species that had dared to ask for equality would become a cautionary tale about knowing one's place. But as they walked toward their shuttle, Kate Morrison was not thinking about failure or humiliation. She was thinking about that sad look in the Altarian's eyes and what it might mean. Something told her that not everyone in the galaxy agreed with what had just happened. That thought would prove more important than anyone could have imagined. 3 months had passed since the humiliation at the Galactic Council, and Earth was learning what it meant to be a prisoner in their own solar system. President Lisa Hayes stood at the window of her office watching the news reports on the wall. Screen. Another human ship had been destroyed, trying to break through the alien blockade. The crew of 17 was gone, and there was nothing Earth could do about it. The blockade ships hung in space like deadly jewels around the edge of the solar system. They were beautiful in their own way, with smooth curves and surfaces that seemed to bend light around them. But their beauty was a lie that hid weapons capable of turning human vessels into dust with a single shot. General Ryan Brooks entered the office without knocking. He had earned that privilege during the crisis meetings that had become routine since the blockade began. His face was grim as he handed Hayes a report tablet. "The Zephyrians just destroyed the mining ship Prosperity near the asteroid belt," he said. "Captain Williams tried to surrender, but they fired anyway. Said he was attempting to flee the system." Hayes felt her jaw clench. Captain Williams had been trying to reach the mining stations to evacuate the workers there. The alien fleet commander had known that, but destroyed the ship anyway. It was a message to any other humans who might think about defying the blockade. Admiral Carol Stone was already seated at the conference table when Hayes and Brooks joined her. The Admiral looked older than her 50 years, and Hayes knew the stress was wearing on all of them. Earth's small fleet of exploration vessels was no match for the advanced alien technology surrounding them. "How many ships have we lost now?" Hayes asked, though she already knew the answer. 14 destroyed, 6 more captured, Stone replied. "The aliens are keeping the captured crews alive, but we have no idea where they are being held. Our people are scattered across a dozen different prison facilities throughout the galaxy." Brooks activated the holographic display that showed the current positions of all known alien vessels. Red dots surrounded Earth's solar system in a perfect sphere. Each dot represented enough firepower to destroy a human city. "They have us completely cut off," he said. "Nothing gets in or out without their permission. They are letting supply ships reach the lunar colonies and Mars settlements, but only after thorough inspections. Any ship that deviates from approved routes gets destroyed." The president studied the display and tried not to think about how helpless they were. Earth had been so proud of their small fleet of exploration ships and their growing colonies throughout the solar system. Now it all seemed pathetic compared to the vast alien armada holding them prisoner. "What about the underground facilities?" she asked quietly. Admiral Stone glanced around the room even though they were in the most secure location on Earth. "Project Midnight Sun is proceeding on schedule. Dr. Alex Carter's teams are working. Around the clock in the deep bunkers. The aliens have not detected the construction sites yet." Hayes nodded. It was the one piece of good news they had. While the aliens were busy patrolling the obvious routes and watching the known human installations, secret projects were continuing in places they had never seen. Deep underground and hidden in asteroid mining operations, human engineers were working on something the aliens had never expected. The wall screen chimed with an incoming transmission. Hayes recognized the face that appeared as Admiral Veltar, the Zephyrian military commander who had taken charge of enforcing the blockade. His crystal features were arranged in what humans had learned was the alien equivalent of smug satisfaction. "People of Earth," Veltar said in his wind chime voice, "I bring greetings from the Galactic Federation. Your recent attempts to breach the protective barrier around your system have been unfortunate but necessary. We understand that some among you still refuse to accept the wisdom of the Council's decision." Hayes muted the sound and turned away from the screen. She had heard this speech before. The aliens called their prison a protective barrier and claimed they were keeping humanity safe from the dangers of galactic society. It was all lies designed to make their captivity seem reasonable. Captain Ben Parker was having the worst day of his life as his exploration ship New Horizon drifted, powerless in space near Mars. The Drakmor patrol vessel that had disabled his engines hung nearby like a predator waiting to finish its prey. Parker had been trying to reach the research station on Phobos when the aliens intercepted him. The Drakmor commander's voice crackled over the communication system. "Human vessel, you have violated the boundaries established for your species. Prepare to be boarded." Parker looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew. They were good people who had volunteered for dangerous exploration missions because they believed in humanity's future among the stars. Now they were about to become prisoners or worse because they had tried to deliver medical supplies to a research station. "Captain," said his navigation officer, Amy Foster, "we have one escape pod left. You should take it." Parker shook his head. "We go together or not at all." He opened the channel to the alien ship. "This is Captain Parker of the New Horizon. We surrender. We were delivering medical supplies to the Phobos station. Our cargo hold is open for inspection." The response was immediate and brutal. Green energy beams lanced out from the Drakmor ship and tore through the New Horizon's hull. Parker had just enough time to see his crew's horrified faces before the bridge exploded around him. On Luna Base, Commander Amy Foster organized another evacuation as alien patrols grew more aggressive each day. The mining operations that had taken decades to establish were being abandoned one by one as the aliens made it clear that any human activity beyond Earth itself was now forbidden. Foster had been born on Luna and had never seen Earth except through telescopes and video calls. Now she was being forced to abandon the only home she had ever known because aliens had decided her people were too dangerous to be allowed freedom. The transport ships could only carry a fraction of the equipment and personnel that had made Luna Base a thriving community. Years of work and billions of dollars in infrastructure would be left behind for the aliens to destroy or claim as they saw fit. "Commander," said her assistant Jake Murphy, "the last transport is loaded. We should go." Foster took one final look around the base that had been her world. In a few hours, alien ships would arrive to strip anything useful from the facilities and then probably destroy what remained. Another piece of humanity's future was being erased because they had dared to ask for respect. Back on Earth, the alien propaganda broadcasts continued around the clock. Chancellor Veltar appeared regularly to explain why humanity needed to be protected from itself. He spoke of human violence and aggression as if they were diseases that might spread to other species if left unchecked. "Your species has shown remarkable potential," the Chancellor would say, his crystal body flashing with false sincerity. "But potential without wisdom is dangerous. The galaxy has seen what happens when violent species are allowed to expand too quickly. We will not make that mistake again." The broadcasts always ended with the same message. Humanity should be grateful for the protection and guidance of the Galactic Federation. They should accept their place as a junior species and learn from their betters. In time, perhaps in a few centuries, they might be ready to join galactic civilization properly. What the aliens did not know was that their propaganda was having the opposite effect. Every destroyed ship, every captured crew, every condescending broadcast was building a fire of anger in the human heart that would not be easily extinguished. In the deep bunkers beneath NORAD, Dr. Carter's team worked by the light of carefully shielded displays. The alien technology they had recovered over the years was finally yielding its secrets. Human ingenuity was adapting and improving on designs that had taken the aliens millennia to develop. "The power coupling is stable," reported Dr. Lisa Chang, Carter's chief engineer. "We are ready for the first test firing." Carter nodded and activated the weapon system they had built from reverse-engineered alien components. Energy flowed through crystals and conduits in patterns that would have seemed impossible just months before. "The test target, a chunk of asteroid metal, simply ceased to exist." "Excellent," Carter said quietly. "Signal the orbital construction sites. We are ready to begin Phase 2. High above Earth, hidden in the shadow of the moon and camouflaged among legitimate mining operations. Human workers were building something the aliens had never expected. The first true human warships were taking shape in secret shipyards that did not officially exist. The aliens continued their patrols, confident that they had successfully contained the human threat. They intercepted communications, monitored energy signatures, and tracked every human vessel that moved through the solar system. But they were looking for the wrong things. They expected humans to behave like other species they had conquered before. They expected desperate attempts to break through the blockade or pathetic pleas for mercy. They did not expect the quiet determination that was building in every human heart, or the careful planning that was taking place in hidden facilities around the solar system. Admiral Stone stood in one of those hidden facilities, watching human engineers install weapon systems that incorporated both human innovation and alien technology. The ship they were building looked like nothing the galaxy had seen before. It was sleek where alien vessels were massive, fast where they were powerful, and designed with a philosophy of warfare that the aliens had never encountered. "How much longer?" Stone asked the construction supervisor. "6 more weeks for this one," he replied. The others will follow quickly after that. Stone nodded and tried not to think about the human lives being lost while they waited. Every day brought new reports of destroyed ships and captured crews, but every day also brought them closer to the moment when Earth would no longer be helpless against the forces that held them prisoner. The aliens had made one critical error in their assessment of humanity. They had assumed that a species capable of diplomacy was incapable of war. They were about to learn just how wrong they had been. Deep beneath the mountains of Colorado, General Ryan Brooks walked through corridors that did not exist on any official map. The old NORAD facility had been converted into something the aliens would never expect to find. What had once been built to watch for enemy missiles was now the heart of humanity's secret war effort. Project Midnight Sun had grown beyond anything they had originally planned. What started as a small research program had become the largest construction project in human history. Thousands of workers labored in shifts around the clock, building weapons and ships that would have been impossible just months before. Dr. Alex Carter met Brooks at the entrance to the main laboratory. The scientist looked exhausted, but his eyes burned with the fire of discovery. In his hands, he carried a data tablet containing information that would change everything. "General, you need to see this," Carter said as they walked deeper into the facility. "We have cracked their shield technology. Not only can we duplicate it, we can improve on it." They entered a vast chamber carved from solid rock where human engineers worked alongside machines that looked like they came from alien nightmares. Pieces of recovered alien technology were scattered across work tables, being carefully dissected and studied by teams of specialists. Carter led Brooks to a workstation where a young engineer named Sam Watson was assembling what looked like a crystal matrix surrounded by metal conduits. Watson looked up as they approached, and his face showed the satisfaction of someone who had just solved an impossible puzzle. "The aliens use brute force to power their shields," Watson explained. "They throw massive amounts of energy at the problem and accept the waste. But if you modulate the frequency and use harmonic resonance, you can achieve the same protection with half the power consumption." Brooks studied the device and tried to understand what he was seeing. "What does that mean for our ships?" "It means we can build smaller, faster vessels that are just as well protected as their massive cruisers," Carter replied. "Speed and maneuverability instead of size and weight. A completely different approach to space warfare." They moved to the next station where another team was working on weapon systems. The lead scientist, Dr. Jennifer Mills, showed them a beam emitter that was barely the size of a human hand. When she activated it for a test firing, it cut through a sheet of alien hull plating like it was paper. "We took their weapon designs and asked a simple question," Mills explained. "What if we focused all that power into a much smaller area instead of trying to create massive destructive blasts? The result is a weapon that can punch through their armor without requiring the power plant of a battleship." Brooks felt a smile tugging at the corners of his mouth for the first time in months. "How many ships can we build with this technology?" Carter consulted his tablet. "The orbital construction facilities are nearly complete. Once they are operational, we can produce one heavy cruiser every 2 weeks. Smaller vessels can be built even faster." Above their heads, hidden among the asteroid mining operations that the aliens largely ignored, human workers were putting the finishing touches on shipyards that would have seemed impossible before the blockade began. The aliens monitored human energy output and material consumption, but they were looking for the wrong patterns. What looked like expanded mining operations was actually the largest construction project in the solar system. Entire asteroids were being hollowed out and converted into factories and shipyards. The raw materials came from the same mining operations that had always existed, just redirected into new purposes. Captain Ben Parker floated in the zero-gravity construction bay of Shipyard Alpha, watching human workers install the final components of Earth's first true warship. He had survived the destruction of his exploration vessel and been rescued by one of the secret evacuation ships that officially did not exist. Now he would command the Terra's Pride, a vessel unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. It was sleek and angular where alien ships were curved and massive. Every line of its hull spoke of speed and deadly purpose. The human approach to warfare was about to be introduced to the galaxy whether they wanted it or not. "Captain," said his new first officer, Lieutenant Nina Clark. "Final systems check is complete. We are ready for initial power-up." Parker nodded and moved to the control station. When he activated the ship's main systems, the Terra's Pride hummed to life with an energy signature that was completely different from anything the aliens were watching for. Their sensors were calibrated to detect the power patterns of alien technology, not the hybrid systems that human engineers had created. Back on Earth, Ambassador Kate Morrison sat in a small apartment in Geneva that served as her unofficial headquarters. The woman who had once represented humanity to the galaxy was now branded a war criminal by the Galactic Federation. Her attempts to organize resistance to the blockade had made her one of the most wanted humans in known space. She was not alone. In her exile, Jake Sullivan, her former aide, had become her chief of intelligence. Together, they coordinated with underground networks across Earth and the hidden colonies that the aliens had missed in their initial surveys. Morrison activated the secure communication system that connected her to resistance cells throughout the solar system. The faces that appeared on her screen represented the best and brightest of humanity, all working toward the same goal of freedom. "Status report from the outer colonies," said Commander Amy Foster from her hidden base in the Kuiper Belt. "We have identified 17 alien patrol routes and mapped their sensor coverage. There are gaps we can exploit." Another face appeared on the screen, Colonel David Hayes, speaking from a secret facility on Europa. "The Jupiter system construction sites are ahead of schedule. We will have 3 more shipyards operational within the month." Morrison felt a mixture of pride and sadness as she listened to the reports. These people had given up everything to continue the fight for human freedom. They lived in hidden bases and worked under false identities, all because they refused to accept the cage the aliens had built around their species. "What about our contact in the Galactic Federation?" Morrison asked. Sullivan activated another communication channel, and the weathered face of Kethva appeared on the screen. The elderly Altarian looked around nervously before speaking. He was risking his life to help humanity, and they all knew it. "The Council grows more confident each day," Kethva said in his whispering voice. "They believe humanity has been successfully contained. Chancellor Veltar speaks of your species as a solved problem." Morrison leaned forward. "What about the other species? Are any of them having second thoughts about our treatment?" "Some are," Kethva admitted. "The Altarians have always believed in fair treatment for all sapient species. Others are beginning to question whether the Council's methods are just, but fear keeps them silent. None want to risk becoming the next target." The communication ended, and Morrison stared at the blank screen for a long moment. The galaxy was watching to see what would happen to humanity. If Earth could be crushed and imprisoned, it would send a message to every other species about the price of defying the dominant powers. But the galaxy was also about to learn something about human nature that the aliens had never understood. When pushed to the wall, humans did not break. They adapted, they innovated, and they found ways to turn their weaknesses into strengths. Dr. Carter emerged from another successful test and wiped the sweat from his forehead. His team had just demonstrated a propulsion system that could accelerate a ship to velocities the aliens would consider impossible for human technology. It was based on principles they had discovered while reverse engineering alien engines, but taken in directions no alien scientist had ever considered. "The test ship reached 0.7 light speed," he reported to Admiral Stone. "The alien patrol vessels we monitored topped out at 0.4. We will be faster than anything they can field." Stone studied the data and allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. "What about weapons range?" Our targeting systems can lock onto enemy vessels at distances their sensors cannot even detect us, Carter replied. We will see them long before they see us, and we will be able to strike from ranges they consider impossible. The pieces of humanity's response were finally coming together. While the aliens celebrated their successful containment of the human threat, Earth was preparing to introduce them to a style of warfare they had never encountered. Human ships would be faster, more maneuverable, and capable of striking from unexpected directions with weapons that could penetrate any defense. But the real secret weapon was something the aliens could not build or copy. It was the human spirit that refused to accept defeat, and the human mind that could find solutions to problems that seemed impossible. Every destroyed ship and captured crew had only strengthened their resolve to prove that humanity deserved its place among the stars. Admiral Stone stood in the observation deck of the completed shipyard and watched the Terra's Pride and its sister ships take their first test flights. The vessels moved through space like deadly dancers, demonstrating capabilities that would shock the galaxy when they were finally revealed. How many ships will we have when we are ready to act? She asked her chief of construction. 12 heavy cruisers, 30 destroyers, and over 100 smaller attack ships, came the reply. All equipped with technology the aliens have never seen and tactics they cannot predict. Stone nodded and began composing the message that would signal the beginning of the end for the alien blockade. Earth had been patient and careful, but their patience was nearly at an end. The galaxy was about to learn that caging humanity had been the worst mistake the aliens could have made. The time for hiding was almost over. Soon the aliens would discover that their prisoners had spent their time in captivity very well. The species they had dismissed as primitive savages was about to remind the galaxy why humans had never been successfully conquered by anyone, including themselves. In hidden bases throughout the solar system, human crews were preparing for a war that would determine the future of their species. They would either win their freedom and their place among the stars, or they would go down fighting in a way that would be remembered long after the last human was gone. But one way or another, the galaxy would never underestimate humanity again. Admiral Veltar stood on the bridge of his flagship watching the latest intelligence reports with growing satisfaction. His crystal body pulsed with the blue patterns that indicated contentment among his species. The human containment operation had been a complete success for 6 months now, and there had been no significant resistance for weeks. Admiral said, his tactical officer, "We are receiving a transmission from Earth. The humans appear to be ready to negotiate terms for their surrender." Veltar's body flashed brighter. This was exactly what he had been waiting for. The stubborn humans had finally learned their place and were ready to accept the wisdom of their betters. It would make an excellent report to the Galactic Council. "Put them through," he ordered. President Lisa Hayes appeared on the main screen of the Zephyrian flagship. She looked tired and defeated, exactly as Veltar expected after months of blockade. Her words confirmed what he wanted to hear. "Admiral Veltar, I am prepared to discuss terms for Earth's formal surrender and acceptance of Federation oversight. We realize that resistance is futile, and we want to avoid further loss of human life." Veltar made the harmonics that passed for laughter among his people. "I am pleased to hear that humanity has finally embraced reason, President Hayes. However, surrender talks must take place in person to be valid under Federation law. I will arrive at Earth orbit in 72 hours with a full battle fleet to accept your capitulation." Hayes nodded with what looked like resigned acceptance. "We will be waiting, Admiral." The transmission ended, and Veltar immediately began composing the orders that would bring the largest alien fleet ever assembled to Earth orbit. This would be more than just a surrender ceremony. It would be a demonstration to the entire galaxy of what happened to species that dared to defy the Federation. Within hours, ships began arriving from across known space. Zephyrian crystalline vessels that bent light around their hulls. Massive, Drakmor battleships bristling with weapons, elegant Nebulan cloud ships that could phase between dimensions. Every major species in the Federation sent their finest vessels to witness humanity's final humiliation. The alien media treated it as the entertainment event of the century. Reporters from dozens of worlds transmitted live coverage as the mighty fleet assembled. The commentators spoke gleefully about the lesson that primitive humanity was about to receive. "This is Clicksta reporting from the command ship of the Federation fleet," buzzed an insectoid journalist. "In just hours, we will witness the formal surrender of the human species. After months of embarrassing themselves with futile resistance, these violent primitives are finally ready to accept their proper place in galactic society." Admiral Stone watched the alien fleet gathering outside Earth's orbit from her hidden command center on the far side of the moon. The enemy formation was massive and impressive, exactly as she had hoped it would be. The aliens were bringing their finest ships and most experienced commanders, all arranged in perfect parade formation for maximum visual impact. "They have no idea what they are about to fly into," she said to General Brooks, who had joined her for the final preparations. Brooks studied the tactical display showing both the alien fleet and the hidden positions of Earth's secret weapon. 12 human warships hung invisible in the shadow of the moon, their new stealth technology making them completely undetectable to alien sensors. "Are you certain our ships can handle that many enemies?" he asked. Stone smiled grimly. "We are. Not going to fight them all at once. We are going to teach them about human tactical thinking." Captain Ben Parker felt his heart racing as the Terra's Pride powered up its weapons systems. Around him, his crew moved with the precision that came from months of secret training. They had all volunteered for this mission knowing they might not survive, but also knowing that the future of humanity depended on their actions. "Captain," reported Lieutenant Nina Clark from the tactical station, "all weapons are charged and ready. Targeting solutions confirmed for the lead enemy vessels." Parker looked at the display showing the alien fleet arranged in perfect formation just above Earth. They were positioned for maximum visual impact with their largest and most impressive ships at the front. It was exactly the kind of arrogant display that human military doctrine was designed to exploit. "Signal the fleet," he ordered. "All ships prepare for attack run Alpha. We go in 30 seconds. The moment that changed galactic history began with 12 human warships suddenly appearing where empty space had been just moments before. The alien sensors that had been watching for the energy signatures of their own technology registered nothing until the human vessels opened fire. Admiral Veltar was in the middle of composing his victory speech when his ship's alarms began screaming. His tactical officer, a nervous Altarian named Glex, was staring at his displays in disbelief. "Admiral, we are detecting 12 unknown vessels attacking the fleet perimeter. They appeared without warning and their weapons are punching straight through our shield systems." Veltar rushed to the tactical display and felt his crystal body flash with the purple patterns of shock. The unknown ships were sleek and angular, unlike anything in Federation databases. They moved with impossible speed and agility, striking at the alien fleet from multiple directions at once. "How is this possible?" he demanded. "Our sensors showed no human ships in the area." "Sir," Glex replied with a trembling voice, "I do not think our sensors can detect these vessels. Their technology is completely unknown." Captain Nina Clark commanded the destroyer Freedom's Edge as it carved through the alien formation like a knife through soft metal. Her ship's weapons were designed with human precision engineering and alien power sources, creating combinations that no Federation scientist had ever imagined. "Target the Drakmor battleship at coordinates 77 Alpha," she ordered her weapons officer. "Full power to forward guns." The alien vessel that had seemed invincible just moments before suddenly found itself under attack by weapons it could not track or defend against. Human targeting systems locked onto weak points in the enemy design that Federation engineers had never considered vulnerabilities. The Drakmor ship's shields flared and died under the concentrated fire. Secondary explosions rippled along its hull as human weapons found ammunition storage areas and power conduits with surgical precision. Within minutes, the massive battleship was drifting powerless in space. Admiral Veltar watched in horror as his carefully arranged fleet began to fall apart under the human assault. Ships that had ruled the galaxy for centuries were being torn apart by vessels that should not even exist. "All ships, attack Formation Delta," he broadcast to his fleet. "Concentrate fire on the unknown vessels." But the human ships were already gone, vanishing into the asteroid belt where the alien vessels could not follow without breaking formation. The attack had lasted less than 10 minutes, but 6 major Federation warships were either destroyed or disabled. "Sir," reported his communication. "Officer, we are receiving a transmission from Earth. It is not from their government." The face that appeared on Veltar's screen was not President Hayes. Instead, he found himself looking at Ambassador Kate Morrison, the human who had been humiliated before the Galactic Council months before. But there was no humiliation in her expression now. "Admiral Veltar," Morrison said calmly, "I hope you enjoyed your first introduction to human military technology. As you can see, we have spent our time in captivity quite productively." Veltar's crystal body flashed with rage. "This is an act of war, Ambassador. The Federation fleet will crush your pathetic resistance." Morrison smiled with cold satisfaction. "Admiral, you declared war on humanity when you imprisoned us in our own solar system. We are simply responding in kind, but I am not calling to threaten you. I am calling to give you one chance to leave peacefully." "Leave," Veltar sputtered. "You dare make demands when facing the might of the entire Federation." "Look at your tactical displays, Admiral," Morrison replied. "Your ships are designed to fight other Federation vessels using Federation tactics and Federation technology. We are not the Federation." As if to prove her point, the human ships struck again. This time they came from below the orbital plane, a direction the aliens had not thought to guard. The Freedom's Edge and 3 other human destroyers appeared among the rear elements of the alien fleet and began systematically destroying communication relays and sensor arrays. Captain Parker led the Terra's Pride in a direct assault on the alien command ship itself. His vessel moved through the enemy formation like it was dancing, avoiding return fire with movements that seemed to defy physics. When his weapons locked onto Veltar's flagship, the alien shields crumpled like paper. "This is impossible," Veltar whispered as damage reports flooded his bridge. "Their ships are too small to carry weapons of this power." His tactical officer Glex looked up from his instruments with an expression of pure terror. "Admiral, I am reading 43 more human vessels approaching from the outer system. They are moving at speeds our ships cannot match." Veltar felt his crystal body dim with the first touch of fear he had experienced in centuries. The humans had not just built a few warships. They had constructed an entire fleet using technology that made Federation vessels obsolete. The second wave of human ships arrived like a storm front, destroyers and cruisers that moved with predatory grace, their weapons reaching out to touch enemy vessels across impossible distances. The carefully ordered alien formation dissolved into chaos as ships tried to maneuver against opponents they could barely detect. Ambassador Morrison's voice cut through the confusion on Veltar's bridge. "Admiral, you now have 5 minutes to begin withdrawing your fleet from Earth orbit. Any ship that remains after that deadline will be considered hostile and dealt with accordingly." Veltar looked around his damaged bridge at the faces of his crew. These were experienced officers who had served in dozens of campaigns against primitive species, but none of them had ever faced anything like the fury they were seeing from the humans. "Sir," Glex said quietly, "perhaps we should consider a tactical withdrawal. We can return with a larger force once we understand their capabilities." Veltar wanted to refuse, wanted to order his fleet to fight to the last ship rather than admit defeat to a species he had dismissed as primitives. But the tactical displays told a story that even his pride could not ignore. 37 Federation vessels had been destroyed or disabled in less than an hour of combat. The humans had lost exactly 0 ships and were showing no signs of slowing their attack. At this rate, the entire invasion fleet would be destroyed within hours. All ships, Veltar broadcast on the fleet frequency, begin withdrawal to the edge of the solar system. This is a tactical repositioning, not a retreat. But everyone who heard the order knew the truth. The mighty Federation fleet that had come to accept humanity's surrender was running away from opponents they could not fight and technology they did not understand. As the alien ships began their withdrawal, Ambassador Morrison appeared one final time on communication screens throughout the fleeing fleet. Her words were broadcast across the galaxy for every species to hear. The days of humanity accepting insults and imprisonment are over. Earth claims its rightful place among the stars, and any species that tries to cage us again will learn why that was such a terrible mistake. The galaxy had just learned that underestimating humanity carried a price they were not prepared to pay. The emergency session of the Galactic Council had been called within hours of Admiral Veltar's humiliating retreat from Earth orbit. The great chamber that had once echoed with laughter at humanity's expense was now filled with anxious whispers and fearful glances. Chancellor Veltar himself stood before the assembly, his crystal body flickering with patterns of anger and shame. The human resistance was more organized than our intelligence suggested, he began, trying to salvage what remained of his authority. They have somehow acquired advanced technology and built a small fleet of warships, but this setback is temporary. The chamber erupted in voices as representatives from dozens of species demanded explanations. How had a primitive species built ships capable of defeating Federation technology? Where had they gotten the resources for such a massive construction project? Most importantly, what did this mean for the stability of galactic civilization? Kethva, the elderly Altarian who had watched Ambassador Morrison's original humiliation with such sadness, rose slowly to his feet. His voice carried clearly through the chamber despite his advanced age. "Perhaps it is time to ask whether we created this problem ourselves," he said. "We treated humanity with contempt and imprisoned them for the crime of asking for membership. Should we be surprised that they responded with force?" Chancellor Veltar's crystal body flashed with indignant patterns. "The humans have proven exactly what we always knew about their species. They are violent primitives who resort to warfare when they do not get their way. They resort to warfare when they are attacked and imprisoned," Kethva replied calmly, "which is exactly what any of our species would do under the same circumstances." The debate continued for hours, but the conclusion was inevitable. The Federation's prestige had been damaged by the defeat at Earth, and something had to be done to restore their authority. If humanity was allowed to defy the Council successfully, other species might begin to question Federation dominance. By the end of the session, Chancellor Veltar had authorization to assemble the largest military force in galactic history. Ships would be called from every corner of known space to crush the human rebellion once and for all. The message would be clear to any species considering resistance. This is what happens to those who defy the Federation. Admiral Carol Stone watched the massive alien fleet gathering at the edge of the solar system through long-range sensors. The enemy formation was 3 times larger than the first invasion force and included veteran ships from campaigns across the galaxy. She had never seen so much firepower concentrated in one place. Final count shows 847 enemy vessels, reported her intelligence officer. Every major species in the Federation is represented, plus mercenary units and auxiliary forces. They are serious about finishing this. Stone studied the tactical projections and tried not to think about the odds they were facing. Earth's entire fleet consisted of 55 warships against nearly 1,000 alien vessels. Even with their technological advantages, this would be the most desperate battle in human history. "What is the status of our reinforcements?" she asked. "The Colonial Defense Forces are moving into position," came the reply. Another 37 ships from the outer colonies, plus support vessels and supply ships. We will have 92 combat-capable vessels when the battle begins. Stone nodded grimly. 92 ships against 847. The aliens had overwhelming numerical superiority, but they were still thinking like the Federation. They expected this to be a traditional battle between two fleets, with the larger force grinding down the smaller through superior numbers. They had no idea what humanity was actually planning. Captain Ben Parker stood on the bridge of the Terras. Pride as his ship moved through the asteroid belt toward its assigned position. Around him, the human fleet was dispersing into formations that would have looked like chaos to alien tactical computers. But every ship knew exactly where it was supposed to be when the battle began. "Captain," reported Lieutenant Nina Clark, "we are receiving reports from deep space scouts. The alien fleet is beginning to move toward Earth orbit. Estimated arrival in 6 hours." Parker activated the fleet communication system that connected him to every human ship in the solar system. When he spoke, his words were heard by thousands of men and women who had volunteered to fight for their species' freedom. "This is Captain Parker aboard the Terra's Pride. In a few hours, we will face the largest invasion force in galactic history. They come here believing that their numbers guarantee victory. They are about to learn the difference between Federation tactics and human warfare." Meanwhile, Ambassador Kate Morrison was preparing for what might be her final diplomatic mission. She had maintained contact with Kethva and other sympathetic aliens throughout the crisis, and now she was about to make one last attempt to prevent unnecessary bloodshed. Her transmission reached the alien fleet just as it entered the outer reaches of the solar system. She appeared on communication screens throughout the massive enemy formation, addressing not just the military commanders, but the crews of every ship. "Warriors of the galaxy," she began, "you have come here believing that you fight to preserve galactic peace and order. But ask yourselves what peace is served by imprisoning an entire species for the crime of asking for equality." Chancellor Veltar immediately ordered his ships to block the transmission, but Morrison had anticipated this. Her message was being broadcast on frequencies that penetrated every communication system in the alien fleet. There was no way to stop it without shutting down their own equipment. "Humanity did not choose this war," she continued. "We tried diplomacy and were mocked. We accepted imprisonment and were told to be grateful. Only when threatened with complete destruction did we finally fight back. We ask you now to consider whether the species you serve deserve your loyalty more than the principles you claim to defend." The message ended, but its impact was immediate. Throughout the alien fleet, crews began questioning the orders they had been given. Some species had joined the Federation to escape oppression, not to become oppressors themselves. Morrison's words found fertile ground among those who had their own doubts about Federation policies. On the bridge of his flagship, Chancellor Veltar watched his fleet's formation begin to waver as ship after ship requested clarification of their orders. Some vessels were even beginning to fall out of formation entirely. The human ambassador's words had accomplished what their weapons could not. They had introduced doubt into the enemy ranks. "All ships maintain formation," Veltar broadcast angrily. "Any vessel that breaks ranks will be considered mutinous and dealt with accordingly," but the damage was already done. When the alien fleet finally approached Earth orbit, it was no longer the unified force that had departed Federation space. Ships held back their full commitment, crews questioned their orders, and some vessels had quietly slipped away during the journey. The human fleet was waiting for them. Admiral Stone had positioned her ships throughout the solar system in a defensive formation that made no sense to alien tactical thinking. Human vessels hung motionless near planets, in asteroid fields, and around orbital installations. They seemed scattered and vulnerable, exactly the kind of target that Federation doctrine was designed to exploit. The alien fleet commander, Admiral Crixtel of the Drakmor Imperium, ordered his ships into attack formation. He would demonstrate the futility of human resistance by crushing their pathetic fleet in a single overwhelming assault. "All vessels, advance on the human positions," he commanded. "Show these primitives the price of defying civilized authority." The alien fleet moved toward Earth in a magnificent display of coordinated power. 800 ships advancing in perfect formation, their weapons charging for the devastating barrage that would end human resistance forever. They never saw the trap closing around them. Captain Nina Clark commanded the first human ship to open fire, but she was not shooting at the advancing alien fleet. Instead, her weapons targeted carefully placed charges throughout the asteroid belt. The explosions that followed were not intended to destroy enemy ships, but to create something far more dangerous. Suddenly, the space between Earth and the alien fleet was filled with billions of high-velocity debris fragments moving in precisely calculated directions. The asteroids that humans had been mining for months had been turned into the largest minefield in history. The alien formation, designed for maximum visual impact, became a liability as ships found themselves unable to maneuver around the deadly obstacle course. Vessels that tried to maintain formation were torn apart by debris, moving at significant fractions of light speed. Ships that broke formation to avoid the obstacles found themselves isolated and vulnerable to human attack. "This is impossible," Admiral Crixtel snarled as his flagship's shields failed under the constant impact of debris. "How could primitives create such an effective defensive system?" His answer came in the form of the Terra's Pride materializing directly behind his ship. Captain Parker's vessel had been hiding in the debris field itself, using the same obstacles that were destroying alien ships as cover for his approach. "Admiral Crixtel," Parker's voice came over the communication system, "you are surrounded by human vessels and trapped in a minefield of our creation. I strongly suggest you surrender while you still have ships left to command." Around them, the battle was turning into a disaster for the Federation forces. Human ships emerged from hiding places throughout the solar system, using tactics that had never been seen in galactic warfare. They struck from unexpected directions, used the planets themselves as shields, and coordinated their attacks with a precision that alien commanders found impossible to counter. The Freedom's Edge led a squadron of destroyers in a devastating attack on the alien fleet's supply vessels. Without support ships, the massive enemy formation would be unable to maintain its offensive capability for more than a few hours. Other human ships targeted communication relays and command vessels, disrupting the alien chain of command and leaving individual ships isolated and confused. The centralized command structure that made Federation fleets so impressive in parade formations became a vulnerability when human tactics disrupted their coordination. Within 3 hours of the battle's beginning, over half the alien fleet was either destroyed, disabled, or in retreat. The remainder were trapped in an increasingly smaller area of space, surrounded by human vessels and still taking losses from the debris field that continued to claim enemy ships. Chancellor Veltar, aboard his personal command vessel at the rear of the formation, watched his dreams of galactic dominance crumble along with his fleet. The species he had dismissed as primitive savages had outfought, outthought, and outmaneuvered the finest military force the galaxy had ever assembled. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "we are receiving surrender requests from 47 Federation vessels. They are requesting permission to withdraw from the battle zone." Veltar felt his crystal body dim with the realization that his career and his species' dominance of the galaxy were ending together. But as he prepared to give the order for general retreat, Ambassador Morrison's face appeared once again on his communication screen. "Chancellor," she said with quiet authority, "humanity offers terms for the immediate cessation of hostilities. Withdraw your remaining forces from Earth space, and we will allow them to depart unharmed. Continue this assault, and we will be forced to destroy every ship in your fleet." Veltar looked around his bridge at the faces of his surviving officers. These were beings who had served the Federation faithfully for decades, believing in the righteousness of their cause. Now they were looking to him for leadership in the face of total defeat. "What terms do you offer for a permanent peace?" he asked, knowing that his authority to negotiate had died along with most of his fleet. Morrison's expression showed no triumph, only the weariness of someone who had seen too much death. "Earth demands full membership in the Galactic Federation with all rights and privileges accorded to founding members. The blockade of our system will be permanently lifted. Any species that wishes to establish diplomatic and trade relations with humanity will be free to do so without Federation interference." The terms were generous considering the magnitude of the human victory, but they were also non-negotiable. Veltar could accept them, or watch the remainder of his fleet be systematically destroyed by opponents he could not match. "I accept your terms," he said quietly. "The Federation fleet will withdraw immediately." As the surviving alien ships began their retreat from Earth space, Ambassador Morrison appeared one final time on communication screens throughout the galaxy. Her words would be remembered as the moment when the balance of galactic power shifted forever. "The age of Federation dominance is over," she announced. "Humanity takes its place among the stars, not as subjects or prisoners, but as equals. Any species that seeks peaceful relations with Earth will find us ready to build bridges of cooperation and mutual respect. Any species that seeks to repeat the Federation's mistakes will discover why challenging humanity is the most dangerous decision they could make." The skies above Earth were no longer darkened by enemy fleets, but illuminated by the lights of human warships patrolling their home system. The species that had been mocked and imprisoned had become the newest great power in the galaxy. The aliens had learned too late that underestimating humanity was a mistake they would never make again.